All right, and now we have just, what did we just do? We have just accepted responses from the participant, the research participant, using the mouse left and right button clicks. And we don't know yet if that's working because now we're going to learn how to generate a log file that will give us the record of the subject's responses, the participant's responses. All right, and so we're going to start. Oh, and before I do that, I meant to do this at the beginning of the last video and I didn't. I want to, this is just kind of a personal preference of mine, but I also think it's usually a good idea because we're starting to get, you can see, kind of a long bit of code here, right? And I'm not going to go through and comment every line right now. We'll eventually comment almost every line to remind ourselves what this is, because what I want Starter to be for all of you is kind of a home base that you can go to remember how to do stuff, to remember what certain commands are about, what certain lines are all about, why we need them, and so on and so forth. So we're going to comment we're going to comment this thing up a lot. But for right now, it's just starting to get a little bit difficult to scroll through this and go to the place that I want to be. So I want to show you a couple of things that I do to make things visually a little bit more obvious for me. So I'm going to put a comment here. That's the 2 slashes. And then just right here, end of main. And then something really visually obvious. You can even put 2 lines of this, something like that. And what does this do? Well, now when I'm scrolling through my code saying, okay, I'm up here, I need to go to trial. Where's trial? Trial's right after main. Let me scroll down. Aha, boom, there's the end of main. Here's the beginning of trial. And you can see that now it's visually a lot more obvious where that starts. I can go ahead and do the same thing right after trial. So right here at the very end, right now it's the very end of our program. It will not be the end of our program by the time we're done. Oops. All caps, end of trial. Again, just a comment. And then something visually obvious that kind of pops out as I'm scrolling through long, lines and lines of code. That pops out. Boom, that's an important part of the code. I see that really long line of green, and I know something just changed right here. Maybe this is where I want to be. Okay, so now that we've cleaned that up a little bit, it's going to be a little bit easier, I think, to scroll through our code and to various places. Now we're going to learn how to put in a log file, to generate a log file. Okay, and the first thing we need to do is a file is kind of like a variable. We need what's called a pointer to the file, and so, oops, there we go, file. And then the asterisk or star indicates that this is a pointer. I haven't talked about pointers yet in the book or in these videos. I'll talk about them later at some point. I don't have like a perfect understanding of pointers by any means. But basically, a pointer just means I'm telling the computer to allocate some memory, and I'm telling the computer I'm not going to tell you how much memory, because I don't know. I would tell you if I knew, but I don't know. So I'll allocate some memory for me, computer, but I don't know how much it's going to be yet. So I'm going to, instead of generating an actual thing, I'm going to generate a pointer to the potential for a thing. I don't know. It's something like that. Programmers are probably like crawling out of their skin right now listening to that explanation, but I'm not a programmer. I'm a psychologist who plays one in a lab. All right. So we've generated the pointer to our file, whatever that means. And now we need to open up or initialize that file. We're going to do that right down here. So I'm going to tell the software what FP is now. FP is fopen, and then open parens log.txt. I'll just call it generically log now. Now that's the first argument to fopen. The second argument to fopen is whether or not I want to write to this file, append to this file, or just read the file. So A is for append, R if you just want to read the file, and W if you want to write the file. Now let me tell you why you should always pick A for your log file. For the log file, if you pick W to write, every time it opens that file, it's going to erase whatever's in it and start over again. Whereas with A, it just goes to the end of whatever is already in that file and appends it. Now, why is that important? Well, ideally, you're going to have a different log file name for each subject. The easiest way often in practice to do that is to go in right after the subject runs and put in the subject number in the log file. There's other ways to do it that are more sophisticated. You can actually have it put into the log file name itself. I probably won't show you how to do that for a while. That's going to be a while into the future. But anyway, suppose just worst case scenario, maybe a subject runs into a problem halfway through the experiment and you have to restart the hardware again, or you have to restart the program again. But you have, like, half of the trials are plenty good data, and then the subject had a problem, had to stop. You need to restart the program. If you're using W, it's going to erase everything the subject's already done. And you don't want to do that usually. You at least want to give yourself the option of deciding whether to do that later or not. So append rather than overwrite. All right, so we now have the log file generated. Now, when we run this, we're going to get an error. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit, but for now, we still needed to do a few things to actually write to this log file. All right, so we've opened the log file. Here's our randomization for the trial order. Here's the for loop where we actually do the trials in random order. And down here is where we destroy the display that we created so that we don't get a memory leak, and we return 0 in the main function. So it's right in this space that we are going to write to the file, and that's done with something called fprintf. And then you need to tell it which file you want to write to. We're going to write to the file fp, and then what you want to write. And right now, I'm just going to put in a header in this log file. And so the first thing I'm going to record in the log file, excuse me, got a bug in my throat. First thing we're going to put in the header is the word trial, because we're going to record I, the number I for each trial, so that I know this is the first trial, this is the second trial, and so on. Now I'm going to put a weird thing in here, \T, and what that's doing is telling it to put in a tab in between trial and the next thing that I put in here, which is going to be response, because this is what response the participant actually gave on that trial. And then a \N, and that N means new line, so that's going to return us to the next line. So what this line right here does is it just puts a header with variable labels into our log file. All right, now to actually record the data, Visual Studio, an exception has been encountered. We'll see what happens. That doesn't sound good. I hope that doesn't ruin this whole take. Okay, moving on, since it didn't actually crash. To actually record the data, we need another for loop. Just like we have a for loop to go through the trials, we need pretty much the same for loop. So for I equals 0, I less than trials, I plus plus, right? Our good old for loop. And then the curly brackets for what's going to happen in the for loop, and fprintf again. And again, we're printing to fp. But now what we're going to print in onto fp is an integer. So the syntax here is %i. That tells it I want to write an integer into that space. And then that same \T for a tab in between that entry and the next entry, \T, and then another integer, which is going to be the response, right? So the first integer is going to be where I record the trial, and the second integer is where I record the response, and then the \N telling it to go on to the next line. Okay, and a semicolon at the end of that line. Okay, so this is where we actually record the data, this loop right here. So we have the header, we put the header on it, and then we record the data. Now we need to do one more thing, which is, again, to avoid a memory leak. Since we've created a file, once we exit our program, we want to close that file. So you do that with the command fclose, and then tell it what we want to close. We want to close fp. All right, now we're in good shape. This should actually now run, but there's going to be an error, like I mentioned to you before. So let's see what that error is all about. Let me hit the local Windows debugger. And there were build errors. Do you want to continue and run the last successful build? No, I do not. I want to find out what the errors are all about. And let's see, we have a syntax error missing. Oh, that may be an actual error that I just put in here. Let's see, what line is that on? 64. That was not the error I was anticipating. Oh, yep, sure enough. Look at that. I forgot my semicolon. Remember our rule. Every line ends in a semicolon except for the ones that don't. Well, that was one that did, so that was bad. Okay. Now I think that will actually fprint. Oh, yes, I did forget, in fact, to tell it what variables I want to print in here, or what I want to print to the file. Goodness gracious. I should probably start over, but so far this take's going all right, so I'm just going to keep going. All right, so what do I want to put in there? I want to put I, which is the trial, and I want to put trial rep, and then square brackets, I. Those are the actual numbers that I want to stick in there to fprintf. So yes, Visual Studio, thank you for reminding me of that. All right, still not the error I was expecting. All right, let me run it again now that I've fixed those problems and see if I can find the problem I was actually looking for. Okay, that one's not going to be important. Yes, here it is, right here. fopen. C4996. This is terrible. This function or variable may be unsafe. Consider using fopen-s instead. To disable deprecation, ooh, sounds serious. Use cert secure no warnings. See online help for details. Yes, indeed. Well, you're not going to have to go to online help because I'm going to show you how to get rid of this. Basically, the fopen command or function is deprecated, and that sounds really, really bad, but all it means is it's old-fashioned and they consider it unsafe. It potentially opens up your software for hackers. So if you ever plan on using your software for commercial purposes or distributing it widely, for teaching purposes or whatever, you might want to consider this, because a lot of people have this on their machine, and that machine also has like banking information or secret student information on it, FERP stuff that's protected by FERPA or whatever. This might be an issue, I don't know. But for just sticking this on your lab computers and running experiments, fopen is fine. And the fact of the matter is, fopen-s, I have never been able to successfully get that to do anything for me. It's terrible. So anyway. We're going to use fopen, and I'm going to show you how to do that. The way you're going to do that is right-click on Starter here on your solution, and go down to Properties, and find C, C++. Open that up and go find Advanced right here, and then Disable Specific Warnings. In this slot right here, we want to disable that warning, which was, let's see, what was that number? 4996. 4996. Disable. Click OK. And now it should run. Unless there's some other bug in here. Nope, it's running. Fantastic. Haha, look at that. Okay, so now we're running. So now if I'm clicking, I should be collecting data in a log file. Let me click. Click. Oops. Okay. Now, let's go track down that log file, so I can show you the other thing, the reason why you did not get a log file just then. All right, this is going to take me a second over here. Actually, so I've just opened up a window here, and now I'm going to go to, actually this is probably not going to work because there is going to be a log file in there from my previous, like working through and making sure all this stuff works. All right, we need to go to the C drive, and then users, and then you are going to go to your name. This is my name. You're going to find your username and click it. And then go to Source, find Source, and Repos, and then find Starter, and then find Debug. And good, I did erase the log file from the previous working out all the bugs and getting this up. So you see, there's no log file here, even though we ran it and there should have been a log file. Why is that? Well, it's because we're running from the local Windows debugger. To actually get the software to generate this log file, we have to run the executable itself that was generated. So when we hit local Windows debugger and run it, it does generate the executable. It compiles it. And can you find it in here anywhere? Do you see where the executable is? Look in your own folder. It's right here. It's the thing that says .exe. And again, this is why you need to set all of your folders to show you extensions even for known file types, because you always need to be able to find the executable and the text file, for that matter, the log file, and so on. So we actually have to, in order to get the log file to generate, we have to run it directly from the executable itself. So I can double click this, or I can right click and say run as administrator, whatever you want to do, but I'm just going to double click it in order to run it. I'll run it real quick and then show you the log file. And we will Verify that works. Okay, so here it goes. Okay, I'm pushing buttons. I just made a mistake. That's okay, because we're just testing it out. So I'm pushing the buttons. Okay, and now you see there's a new file in there, log.txt. And if I open that file, if I click it, it'll just open in Notepad or WordPad, something like that. And look at that. There's my trial headers that I put in, trial, response. And then you see the trials just go from 0, 1, 2. You can see there again on trial 1, I did not respond. That's because it was the very first stimulus, and I was trying to drag that over from my second screen so you could actually see what was going on. So I missed that one. And so that tells me also that my initializing that response variable as 0 worked. But then I pushed left, push right, and so on. All right, so now we have successfully recorded the participants' responses. Now, there's a bunch of other stuff you would need to record, right? This is actually useless right now because what do I not know right now in this log file? I do not know what the stimulus was, right? So I have no idea whether this person was correct or incorrect. So I'll show you how to record that stuff in a future video. This one's dragged on long enough. You now know how to generate the log file. Actually, I should give it to you as an independent challenge. Now stick in what the stimulus was on that trial. I don't know. Can you do that yet at this point? I think try that, and then I'll explicitly show you. Probably, yeah, maybe in the next video. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know what I'll do in the next video. Who knows? All right, that's enough for now.